gang, I am Joe Edelman, and welcome to The Last Frame Live. Tonight, we're going to talk about a four-letter word, free. So, does it fall into the category, remember what your mama taught you and don't use four-letter words? Or does this four-letter word get a pass? We'll see. Look, if you're watching live, please leave me a note in the chat. Let me know who you are, where you're watching from. It's always cool to see where people are tuning in from. Alrighty, who do we got here? We got FN89. So Stephen up in Canada, Lynn in New York, David's here from San Diego. I got Alvin down in Virginia, Ty in New Jersey, Brenda's here, Keith is here, Mike is here. Thank you guys so much. And look, if you're watching the replay, no problem. Leave a comment below the video. Let me know you're here and where you're checking out the videos from, okay? All of you are part of a community that I appreciate. It's a growing community of over 100 photographers from over 100 countries worldwide who routinely tune in to watch The Last Frame Live. And for that, I'm going to continue to work really hard to help you improve your photography in the next 60 minutes. So of course, if you could do me a solid, please hit that thumbs up below the video. The more thumbs up, the more YouTube recommends the video to other photographers so they find out about the show. And of course, since you're here, go ahead and hit that share button. Let your photography friends know that we are streaming live right now. Facebook, Twitter, they're the fastest ways to do that. I also shared the link in the chat. You can copy and paste that and send that out. All right, so I think tonight we're going to dive right in. Not a lot of news to talk about. There's a couple little things, so we'll get to those kind of in the Q&A section. But I'll tell you right now, especially for those of you that are here live, I am hoping that as we get a little further into this topic, that we can have a little bit of a conversation, because you probably expect that I may take a slightly different approach on this topic than a lot of people do. And really, it's designed to get us all to think, and more importantly, actually, to get us to have better conversations about this topic. Because here's the problem with this topic. And full disclosure, the members of my TOGKnowledge community that are here watching tonight, they know, or most of them know, where this topic came from. We had a community meetup last night, which we do once a week. And we had a discussion about doing free work for magazines, which I'm going to touch on that a little bit. But interestingly enough, I've had two other people talk to me about this subject in the last week. And it's kind of one of those subjects. It's been around forever. It gets talked about all the time. It never goes away. So I went out and I did 5 minutes of research, because I decided, you know what, this is a topic that I do have a lot of passionate feelings about. So I'm not going to script anything. I didn't want to take any notes. But I always kind of like to see what I'm up against. So I did a Google search on the topic of, is it okay to work for free, right? 2,440,000 plus results. Wow. Now, of course, they're not all about photography, but it doesn't matter, because honestly, it's pretty much the same regardless of what you're talking about when it comes to working with free. And I will tell you this, part of my 5 minutes, out of the first 6 results, every single one of them contradicts something about the other articles, right? But there's an even bigger problem. None of them really breaks down the exceptions. So let's start with the question that I asked you in the lead-in. Should we relegate the word free to the category of remember what your mama taught you and don't use four-letter words? Yes, we should. In my opinion, and my advice to you, never work for free. Now, I bet that surprised some of you, but let me explain. And I'm not playing with words, but I'm making sure that we're being straight about the words. By all means, don't charge people. That's different than working for free. So let's start there, because I want this to be kind of the framework with how we break down, does it make sense or not make sense? Should you, when might you, all that kind of stuff. There is a simple psychological fact about the word free. So this comes from research that has been done, honestly, for decades. It's not new research. It's research that's been around for a while. It's research that has been repeated. It's research that's been updated in the digital internet world, especially for e-commerce websites, programs, etc. This is something that is constantly researched in the business world. And that is the idea of free. The problem that you have as a service provider, because as a photographer, whether you're running a business, whether you're just, doing a little bit of a side hustle and making some money on the side, the problem that you have is anything that you do involves several things, right? It involves your time, very important. It involves potentially tangibles if you're delivering prints. It involves, of course, the wear and tear on your gear. Hey, in today's world, never forget the gas that it takes to travel someplace, all that kind of stuff, right? So the problem that you have is when you do something for free, that word immediately devalues what you're doing. It takes all the value out of it. And let's face it, as a consumer, what do you tend to think when you hear the word free? What's the catch? Right? What's the catch? So free is also a trigger word. So we need to, number one, ban that word from the conversation. There's still a very important conversation to be had, and I'm not playing with words. I'm just saying, look, that word needs to come out of the conversation because you should never work for free. You should never tell anybody you'll do something for free. You shouldn't give them something for free. Free is 4 letters. Eliminate it. It's lazy, it's sloppy, and it devalues you and what you're doing. And the problem with devaluing what you do is just that. Even though you may be going out of your way to provide value to someone and to help them and to give them something special, because it's free, it devalues it in their minds, which means that your time, your effort, your energy, everything you're doing is not valued as much. That's problematic. So let's talk about working for no charge. Oh, one other thing. I'm sorry, before I go on. In case you've never heard me talk about business marketing and that kind of stuff, and even for those of you that are just shooting for fun, maybe it's a side hustle, or maybe at some point down the road, somebody says, hey, listen, if I give you a couple bucks, could I get you to do this for me? So don't think that this conversation doesn't apply to you, because it does, right? I always talk to people when I'm teaching out at events and that portrait photography is the one genre of photography. I know I have people here that shoot landscapes and, shoot wildlife and all that kind of stuff. But here's the reality. Portrait photography is the one genre that every photographer should learn to be competent at, functional at. Because if you have camera gear, you will be asked to take a portrait, right? So even if you're not trying to make money, not doing a side hustle, this conversation actually applies to you and it will help you, right? So the middle piece between charging and doing something for no charge, the word free is no longer used. The middle piece is a discount. I am also a firm believer, and you'll find some people in the business world that disagree with this. You'll find plenty of photographers that do this, what I'm about to say don't do, but I'll tell you this. Think of the most successful, and I mean like high-end, make lots of money, busy photographers that you can think of, doing portraits, weddings, whatever. You are never going to see them offering discounts to their clientele. Not going to happen for a very simple reason. Giving somebody a discount is almost as bad as giving something for free, because when you give a discount, you are basically revealing, you're pulling back the curtain, and you're showing people what your services are actually worth. Because who's going to do work at a loss? Who's going to run a business where you don't make any money? Right? There is an expectation when people ask you, even if they're saying, hey, would you do me a favor? There's still an expectation that you're going to get something from it. Don't be afraid of that. Right? It's all good to do people favors, It's actually great as a photographer to support charities and causes and things like that. Absolutely. But even then, you should be looking at, what do I get out of it? Maybe it's experience. It could be any number of things. But you should be getting something out of it, right? But when you give a discount, you are revealing your true worth. Perfect example, I tell this story all the time. If you're a guy and you have a significant other and she shops at Kohl's, or ladies, if you shop at Kohl's, Kohl's, the department store here in the United States, it's up for sale. And they're having a hard time finding somebody to buy it because they're losing money like crazy. Because Kohl's has trained its shoppers. You don't shop at Kohl's unless you have the 30% off coupon. And the problem they have now is they don't want to give out those 30% off coupons as much, so people don't go. My wife loves Kohl's, but she will not set foot in that store without a 30% off coupon, ever. And she never has, and all the time I've known her. So they have shown the real worth of the products in their stores. And they have trained the customers that everything in that store is overpriced by at least 30%. So why would you do that? Why would you choose to spend an additional 30%? Who's going to do that, right? So free, that's gone. Discounts, dumb idea. That's not the way. And again, I'm all for cutting people a break, doing people a favor. I'm going to tell you what you do instead of discounts, but no discounts. So we take those off, right? So let's start with the photographers that are early in their career. Should you do things at no charge? Should you do work without getting paid? Hell yes. Absolutely. And you should do a fair amount of it. It's a little bit of paying your dues. And look, let's be clear. You can go ahead and write me up and say, yeah, well, he's just an old guy from a different generation. No. Here's where this breaks down. I'm correct. I'm 1,000% correct that you should do a considerable amount of work for no charge. But here's the problem. So many photographers, young photographers, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about, just starting out. And actually, I shouldn't say young. That's not fair. I should say new photographers, right? They start out with the idea that, okay, I get it. I probably need to do a couple things, without getting paid. But they think that it's just go through the motions, right? So I should go and I should take the pictures and, whatever. No. What did I say a few minutes ago? You never do something for no charge unless you're getting something for it. So for those new photographers that are just starting out, but have a dream or a goal of being able to make money, maybe pay your bills with a camera, whatever it is, the reason why you're going to do things for no charge is to gain experience. However, you actually have to work harder when you do it for no charge. Seriously, before the event or whatever it is you're photographing, you need to put in extra effort and you need to essentially create yourself a challenge. I don't mean in a sense of a game. I mean legitimately a challenge. Maybe this is one of the first times you've been asked to take pictures, and indeed you're going to do it at no charge. And you're really not at a point yet where you feel comfortable or think you're going to be able to get something back. You don't get a pass. What you need to do is you need to look at this task that you're about to take on, and you need to ask yourself, as it relates to this task, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What part of this task am I most confident about? And what part of it concerns me a little bit? Because I've never done this thing before. So I need to make sure that I'm really prepared for that. That becomes your challenge. That's where you're going to go do some research. Reach out to a mentor if you have one. Potentially go and do some research on YouTube, Google, whatever, understanding that the real learning doesn't happen until you pick up the camera. But you are going to set yourself a goal. So when you go to this event or whatever it is you're going to photograph, or this person comes to you to do their portrait, you are going to have a goal of creating some kind of experience for you that is going to help you elevate your game, of trying a new technique, of doing something differently in a way that you've never done it before. It is a very specific learning goal. Saying that, well, I've never shot a portrait before, so that's the learning goal. That's not a learning goal. That's just a way to come away with a really crappy portrait. It just is. right? If you never shot a portrait before, you should be finding somebody to practice on before you do this. You have to treat these no-charge projects like a gig, a job. It's a client. There is a client. Just because they're not paying you, you can't treat them as less than a client. You could have said no. So if you treat them as less than a client, you're getting your business off to a horrible start. And you are potentially right out of the box losing a customer down the road. So you have got to set yourself a set of goals, and you are going to practice, you're going to prepare, and you're going to work to achieve those goals. That's what you're getting out of it in the very beginning, right? As we get a little further down the road, we hear this all the time in today's world. And honestly, look, straight talk, guys, you know I don't mince words. Can we all please just stop whining? And I mean whining about, they asked me to do this, this, and this, and in exchange, they'll give me exposure. I can't tell you how, in fact, even a couple of the photography blogs ran an article about that this past week. It's like, why is this even a conversation? Right? That's like saying, well, that guy's a Republican, oh, or that guy's a Democrat. Oh, why do we do that? What does it matter? What does it matter that they asked you to do it for exposure? There's this really simple word that you all learned as toddlers. It was one of the first 50 words that you learned as a human being. No. If you want to be really polite, you could say, I'm sorry, but no thank you. So what's the big deal that they asked? Why do we have to whine about it? Why do we have to bitch about it? You need to understand, put yourself in their shoes. We live in a world where everybody's a photographer. Oh, wait, everybody's a photographer. Got to use the air quotes on that one, right? Okay, because, you know, these folks are photographers. It says so in the dictionary. And that's cool. Look, I'm not being a smartass, right? So the point is, there are tons of people to take pictures. Just because you spent thousands of dollars and just because you've watched 500 YouTube videos, you are not entitled to make money. You are not entitled to have people come to you and offer you money to take pictures. You're not entitled to anything, right? So when somebody asks that, just politely say no thank you and move on. Or be more entrepreneurial. More entrepreneurial in the sense of pause for a minute, have a conversation with them, learn a little bit more about what they're asking you to do. You know, because, hey, could you take pictures at our event? Well, that's pretty generic. That doesn't tell you much. Get the facts, get the details. And then consider for a few minutes, is there a way that I could make this worth my while? It would be either for the purpose of learning, experience, hopefully material that you would be able to use in a portfolio. And if it doesn't meet those criteria, then we're right back where we started. The answer is, thank you, but I'm sorry, that's not for me. If you can find a way to make it meet those criteria, then you're going to counteroffer. You're going to want releases. You're going to want the ability to use the images, etc. Whatever it is, you're going to negotiate that. And then you actually come out the big winner. Because you actually come out with material that is going to help you move to the next level, whether that's with a new skill set, experience, or better yet, images or even tear sheets that allow you to demonstrate increased ability. So understand, again, my next point there, you're not entitled to make money. You have to earn that. The fact that people are smart enough, the people that ask you to do things for exposure, the people that ask you to do things for free, you know what they're called? They're called smart. Period. And even if you don't want to give them the credit of being smart, the fact of the matter is, and this is part of the human condition, not everyone will appreciate the value and the worth of photography because in their mindset, hey, anybody can take a picture, so why should I pay you a ton of money? Okay. Again, that's like, well, Republican or Democrat. Yeah, how many times are you going to argue about who's right or wrong or this or that? What's the point? There's no value to that. None. So just move on and focus on what you're doing. All the whining and the bitching doesn't help. And where's this whining and the bitching happen? It happens on social media. And what happens on social media? Things are recorded in perpetuity forever. And then down the road, when you want to go ahead and start a business and really do something because you've upped your game, there's all this trash talk that you put out there. And that's a whole nother conversation we'll have at a different last frame about bitching publicly about potential customers. I mean, that's just a dumb idea. But yet so many photographers do it, right? So find a way, if at all possible, to make it worth your while. Honestly, like it or not, it is essentially part of the process of paying your dues. Cameras today give all of us a very inflated sense of ability. And you know, as I said, all of us, me as much as somebody that just bought their camera 3 months ago. The reason is the technology in the cameras is amazing, which is cool, right? But at the end of the day, the camera still only takes you so far, and then you have got to be creative. The more creative, the better. And you notice I went from over here to over here. You've also got to build up a foundation of knowledge, actual technical knowledge and skill. Otherwise, this is going to be very random, meaning sometimes you'll look amazing and other times you're just going to look like crap because you're not going to be able to exceed where the camera takes you. So as a result, it gives us a false sense of confidence and ability. You got to put in the work. So when you're starting out, the idea of not charging is about paying your dues and gaining experience. Now, part of the conversation that we had in the TOGKnowledge community last night was about the fact that there are so many magazines that are out there today, and very few of those magazines pay any money. So let's start at the bottom and we'll work our way to the top. The top being, like, I don't know, Cosmopolitan or Vogue or Elle or any of those, right? So we'll start at the bottom. The bottom are the magazines that any Joe Blow can go ahead and start their own magazine. There are companies like MagCloud. There's a bunch of companies, but MagCloud is one we talked about last night, where you can go in, you can download their software, you can design a magazine, you can make it look really cool, and they'll help you set up a web page to market it and sell it, and people can read it online, or they can actually buy a print copy of your magazine. But the best part of it is you don't have the overhead where you had to go and print 5,000 copies of that magazine and then distribute them. They are what's called POD, or print on demand, right? So traditional thinking, people tend to say, well, that's not a real magazine. Well, actually, yeah, it is. It is, because the world evolves, right? The cool part about content, about publishing, the internet came along, digital technology came along, anyone can publish. Anyone can be a publisher, anyone can be a writer, anyone can be an author. And that's why there's a lot of really amazing stuff written, and that's why there's a lot of really bad stuff written. Sounds a lot like photography, doesn't it? Right? Anyone can do it. And that's cool. So, photographers, and indeed the ones who complain about this magazine situation the most, well, I forgot the air quotes, magazine situation the most, tend to be older photographers, because they still think of a magazine in a traditional sense, print, paper. Got to stop thinking that way, right? For these magazines, you have to look at it from the standpoint of all the same stuff I've already said. What do you get out of it? Don't fall for the, well, you'll get exposure trap unless there is a legitimate exception. But you don't fall for the exposure trap unless you have checked out that magazine. And when I say checked it out, number one, looked at it just to see what kind of quality is the magazine. But then number two, and oftentimes, if you're being honest with yourself, just by looking at the magazine, you already know the answers to the following questions. But the following questions are, well, what is their social media presence like? How many people are reading that magazine every month? One of the things that you could do when you're talking to the people from that magazine, if they've published multiple issues, ask them to see the analytics. Tell them you want to see the analytics to see how many people have viewed it, how many people have read it. They're probably going to balk and not want to show you that because, of course, it's not that many. But one of the easiest things to do is just look at their social media following. If they have like practically nothing, then you know that there's no exposure to be had from that. And by the way, gang, let's be really clear. Under the right circumstances, if you're thinking things through, exposure is great. And I'll give you a perfect example. Most of you know that over the last, I think it's 4 months, I had this cover on Good Light magazine, which comes out of Germany and the UK. And then I had this cover on Good Light magazine just recently, and a 40+ page layout inside, which was actually really pretty cool, okay? Good Light magazine, very well-respected magazine, great readership, awesome social following. They don't pay. I didn't get paid. You never heard me say I got paid for those. I don't get paid when I do those articles for Good Light. So at this point in my career, I've got 250,000 followers aggregated on social media. I've been shooting for 50 years. I'm reaching the end of my career. Why would I even consider putting in that much effort? You go read those articles. There's a lot of effort in those articles. Not to mention I made lighting diagrams, all that kind of stuff. Why would I do that? So believe it or not, gang, I do it for the thing that so many of you bitch about. I do it for exposure. Because they can give me legitimate exposure to a worldwide audience that is also potentially my audience. But see, unlike a lot of people, I'm actually smart about it. Okay? I'm smart about it in the sense that when I write one of those articles, I'm not just writing it for the magazine. In fact, the arrangement that I have is they get the article, they get it for 2 months, and then after 2 months, I'm going to reprint that article on my blog in its entirety, stating that it was originally published in Good Light magazine. That's fine. That's no big deal. But then I'm going to turn snippets from that article into social media posts for months on end. I'm going to repurpose parts of that article in a video. I have a simple rule. Whenever I create a piece of content, if I write an article, whatever it is, there has to be at least 15 different uses for that article. Otherwise, I don't write it. If I can't find 15 different uses for it between videos, smaller articles, social media posts, publications, maybe it's Good Light, maybe it's Shutterbug Magazine, wherever, then it's not worth me writing it. Even when I write articles for Petapixel or for DIYphotography.net, I'm looking at 15 different ways that I can reuse it. So am I getting paid by those organizations? No. And as a rule, they don't pay. Good for them. But they each have something to offer that is of value to me. So I could just say, well, I'm going to get good exposure. Let me write it and do it. And there it is. That's fine. But why stop there? Why not be smarter yet? Put in a little bit of extra effort since I'm basically working on my own behalf for myself and make sure that, number one, I've written an excellent article that will make a great sample piece for me to show to other potential clients or publications to show not only the quality of my photography, but the quality of my writing and my education. Why not put in the extra effort to make sure that I've got all these additional ways that I can reuse this material? Why would you not do that? Because then the time that you're going to put into creating that thing that you are not charging for is going to pay off for you many ways down the road. David, I have a feeling you came in late. The word free is no longer part of our conversation, and I appreciate your opinion, but even if I allow the use of the word free, your statement never ever work for free unless you're doing charity. That's horribly wrong, David. Stop telling people that because that's a really foolish plan, okay? It just is. If you're going to build a career as a photographer, you're not going to do it without doing work at no charge at some point. And even when you become successful, you are still going to do work at no charge. I guarantee you, you think of the most successful photographer that you can think of who's alive today and working, reach out to them, ask them if they ever do anything at no charge. They will tell you yes. Hell yeah. In part because one of the reasons to work hard as a photographer, one of the reasons that I bust my butt at what I do is because a lot of time, the stuff that is the most fun, the stuff that is going to be honestly the most exciting to do, it's the stuff where the people are smart enough not to pay for it because they know that a lot of people would jump at the chance to do it. I'm one of those people that'll jump at the chance to do it if it floats my boat and I really want to do it. Hell yes. Why wouldn't I? I mean, that's the whole goal behind all this. If you're gonna run a business, if you can't find a way to have some fun at what you're doing, the minute it becomes work, you blew it. You're doing it all wrong. I work all or part of 7 days a week, but I don't feel like I have a job. I don't get up in the morning and be like, oh my God, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. No. I love what I do, and that's the key. Love what you do and do what you love, and it's not work. So there are plenty of times throughout a photographer's career where it makes complete sense not to charge. But I talked about that discount thing before. Let me double back to that really quick because that's important. I don't want to leave you hanging on a discount thing, right? So what are you going to do for those situations where you want to help somebody out? But coolly do I watermark the images? Come on, did you really just ask me that question? Sorry, folks, I just saw that pop on the chat. Coolly, you have to have heard me rant about watermarks. I've got like 8 videos where I talk about how stupid watermarks are. Stupid. Please quote me on that. Do not watermark your images. Watermarks on images are for photographers who suck and have no confidence in their work. Because if your work is good enough, people know it's yours and you've got nothing to worry about. So stop with the watermarking shit. That's amateur, it's cheap, and it's obnoxious. It just is. The fact of the matter is, I don't care what your watermark is, I can remove it. I can remove it in less than 3 minutes. And you know the best part of it is? I don't even have to do the work. I can just let Google do it for me. So why bother? Right? Come on, gang. All right? Don't talk to me about branding and marketing and all that crap because it just shows how foolish you are and how little you understand about marketing. You want people to hire you. You want people to know that you took that picture and then make that picture so damn good they're going to want to know who took the picture. And if you're not there, well then stop whining, stop worrying, stop playing games, start fronting. Pick up the damn camera and work to get there. That's what it's about. Don't take my word for it because like I'm some idiot talking on YouTube right now. Think about the photographers who you admire the most, the ones out there working, the big names. Go look at Lindsay Adler's website. Go look at Peter Hurley's website. Tell me how many watermarks you're going to see. You want me to save you the trouble? Here's the answer. They don't need to. They simply don't need to. So yeah, you don't want a watermark, okay? Alvin, yeah, I wish watermark was a 4-letter word. There's a couple of them. Watermark, smile. I wish they were all 4 letters. It'd be like so much easier. But seriously, back to the discount thing, okay? Come on, Cooley, you know better. I know you know better. The problem with discounts, right? We already talked about. It reveals the true value of what you're doing. But what do you do in those situations where you want to cut somebody a break? Right? I just had a conversation with a friend of mine recently who is running a hair salon. And she is really struggling with raising her prices because she opened up her salon and started out with her prices way too low. She did not have a really methodical process for establishing her rates. And now the problem that she has is she's crazy busy. She's working insane hours, which is a good problem, right? But she's actually still not making enough money. That's a big problem. So what I explained to her is like, all right, look, first thing you need to do right out of the box is you need to get your rates to where they belong. And of course, her fear is she's going to lose all her clients. And part of the lesson is she actually needs to lose some of the clients. Because she's so cheap, some of the clients are essentially bottom feeders. They're only coming to her because she's cheaper than anybody else around. So she's going to need to lose some of those, right? If she's super worried about losing customers because she's got to get her prices up to where they belong, then what she's got to do is she's got to restructure the way her packages are set up for people so that you can't compare them side to side. And it's not about scamming people. It's just making them sound different. But if you're going to give somebody a break, gang, what you do is you throw things in or you take things out. So let's say for whatever reason, I'm going to use simple numbers because I suck at math. Let's just say that, you tell somebody, hey, it's going to cost $300 for this. And they hem and they haw like, I can't go a penny over $200, but I really want you. Your work is amazing, and I'll try everything I can to get you exposure, but I only have $200. Well, if you're looking at that task and saying, I want to do this, Rich, I'm going to pretend that you're not still having a conversation about watermarks, man. Like, I'm pretending that you're not. I don't give a shit what you just proposed to me. A watermark is a watermark. It's dumbass. Stop it, Rich. Go look at all the content that I put about watermarks and don't take my word for it. But don't come in here and keep up a watermark conversation. I said it's stupid in the first place, so why are you proposing different things? Come on, man. You know better. With the discount stuff, take something out if you want to do the job. So normally, maybe you deliver 20 images, only deliver 5, and then give them the option to pay for the additionals. Right? So you lower what you're giving them so that you're doing less work. You're investing less time. Because as a photographer, how are we really basing our rates? We're basing our rates based on the time that we put in. And that's where so many photographers go south. Because they'll look at the idea, oh, I'm going to shoot a wedding and it's 8 hours. And they're building all the pricing around 8 hours. That's a wedding photographer that's going to fail immediately. Because, yeah, you may be spending 8 hours with the bride and groom that day. If you're doing your job right, you have spent more than 8 hours with them before you actually go and take the wedding pictures. And you're going to spend 8 hours or more processing those images after the fact. So that 8 hours is actually a minimum of 24 hours. And if you're not pricing like that, you're pretty much guaranteeing that you're going to fail, because even if you get busy the way you're pricing, there's not enough hours in a week for you actually to start making real money at that kind of pricing structure. It's not going to work. Gabe, you're going to be a ClickOn? Awesome. Very cool. I hope you're taking one of my classes or both my classes or all 3 of my classes for that matter. So the discount thing is really simple. One, you never do discounts. If somebody is like begging and you really want to help them out, you say, well, look, I can't give you a discount. And honestly, I just tell people straight up, it's like, look, I'm sorry, but as a rule, I never do discounts. This is what it costs me to be able to do work. But here's what I'll do for you. If you only have the $200, that's the example I used, I can do this much. And I'm basically reverse engineering it so that, based on the amount of time that I'm going to put in, I'm still making my normal hourly rate. My hourly rate is my hourly rate, and I will not discount that rate. Done, ever, period, for anything, right? Simply won't do it. And I guarantee you, successful photographers will not do it. Discounts, specials, that's the problem. You see all these photographers doing these mini sessions, like, 25% off, this, that. They're bottom feeding themselves, and they're cutting the legs right out from underneath their business. That's not how you build a successful business. Too many photographers today start their business with the entire focus on sales and marketing and not enough focus on the photography. If your photography is good enough and if the client experience is good enough, people will want to hire you and they'll pay whatever you want to charge, period. So, that's the way that you need to approach it. So the short piece here, because I do want to do some questions, and apparently we still have to debate watermarks. The short answer to all this is you never work for free. Free is a 4-letter word, and it's a stupid word. It's a word that devalues you and everything you're doing for free. Working for no charge, very important. It has a lot of value, but you have to put thought into it. You have to consider, and you have to be able to answer yourself. Hold yourself accountable. What do I get out of it? And even if it's something where, like I described, I just really want to do that project. I think that project will be a blast. I want to do it. I have no problem just making the decision. You know what? I'm going to do it, and I know I'm not going to make a dime. But I hold myself accountable to the fact that, okay, if I do it, how do I make it worth my while? So you should already know, in my case, it's going to be how much content can I get out of it? Because that's what I'm doing in my business right now. For you, depending on where you are in the learning curve and in the development process, it may be about what new experience can I get or what new portfolio images can I get. And by the way, when we talk about portfolio images, and a couple of weeks down the road, I think I'm going to do a last frame about photographers' portfolios, because man, it's embarrassing how much photographers don't understand what the hell a portfolio is and how bad their portfolios make them look. Sorry, but again, I'm keeping it real, okay? There's an art form to putting together a good portfolio, and there should be a story in your portfolio. I don't mean photojournalism. I mean a story that connects with the potential customers that you are looking to get. Your portfolio is your opportunity to make sure that you get the right customers, the ones that you want. And I don't just mean the ones that will pay the kind of money that you want, but the ones that are, God, whatever, are going to ask the right questions, are going to treat you the right way, who are going to want to do the projects the way that you want to do them, all that kind of stuff. Your portfolio is the way that you manage that, right? So even if you're going to do it for portfolio development, make sure that you have a very specific goal of what it is you're trying to accomplish in terms of the portfolio development when you do that project. But don't let anybody tell you that you should never work at no charge. Don't let anybody tell you that, you have to do this or you have to do that. You don't. If you want to do it, do it. But the smart photographer will hold themselves accountable to what is the value of doing it. Because, bottom line is, especially if you're trying to make money, if you're running a business done for fun at the end of the day never pays the bills. It tanks your business. So have fun at what you're doing. I have lots of fun at what I'm doing. But no matter how much fun I'd like to have, I've got to find some piece of value out of it that I am going to be able to use and monetize later or get a return from in terms of, other publications, those types of things. There's got to be that additional value piece. Otherwise, I'm simply not doing it. Okay? All right. So scrolling back a little bit here. So look, Rich, I know you're trying, but let me see what this is you said. So what about photographers that watermark their images they're selling on SmugMug? Without a watermark through the image, you don't have to buy the image, just download the image. That's not true, Rich, at all, okay? Here's the thing, and then he goes on to say, complex watermarks are more difficult for customers to remove. No, they're actually not, Rich, okay? So that's the thing. Look, if you're posting pictures online and people are just stealing them from you, right? Like if you're doing the SmugMug thing. And Rich, I'm not trying to be a jerk now, as much as he irritated me coming back with this watermark question. But let me try, now that I'm done snapping at you, let's try and solve your problem. But you're not going to really like my answer. But it's the answer you need to hear. If you are running into that problem where you're posting proofs up on SmugMug and people are just grabbing a digital image, or for that matter, even doing a screenshot of it, right? And then cropping it down themselves, whatever. If you're doing that, you're dealing with the wrong customers. And you're selling the wrong products. And you're showing them the wrong way. Because here's step one, gang. I hate to tell you. Now, Rich, I don't know what you shoot. And I'd love to know what you shoot. Like, are we talking portraits? Are we talking like sports pictures? What are we talking about picture-wise, right? Because that will frame the conversation a little bit differently. But here's the point, right? If your work is good enough, number one, people know it's yours and they're not going to be able to steal it. if your work is good enough, when they take it even to Walmart or Walgreens or CVS or Rite Aid, those places aren't going to print it because they're going to realize it's a professionally done image. So that's step one. Step two is, if you're really trying to make money as a photographer, like really trying to make money, posting your pictures on SmugMug so people can go and place orders and then get stuff, you're not going to make squat, and you're not going to pay your bills. You're just not. Because you're cutting out one of the most important parts of the whole transaction, and that's the selling process. The successful photographers, they make money by selling prints, not online. They make money by in-person sales, IPS. That's where the money's at. So, you know, it sounds like you are, okay, Rich says he doesn't do it, but he knows people do. So, Rich, let them be idiots. Or, you know, go talk to them and say, hey, there's this dude, Joe Edelman, that like flew a gasket because he heard about watermarks, whatever. But what does it matter then? Right? What does it matter? That's like when, you know, when somebody says to me, hey, I saw this YouTube video and the guy said this, but you say this, Joe. What do you make of that? I make of the fact that guy's on YouTube. He's an idiot. Why are you asking me that question? I'm on YouTube. You can call me an idiot and ignore it. But did you do that in school? Did any of you do that in school? Did you walk up to your professor? Or worse yet, in grade school, did you walk up to your teacher and say, hey, I read a magazine when it said that. Why did you teach me this? No, you didn't. Okay? So, you know, we take it for what it is. Cloud Strife. I do have a question regarding screens. Can you find monitors that cover room, cover what is that? ROM Pro Photo Spaces? Can software like Photoshop capture one, reproduce those? You mean like Adobe Pro Photo Spaces? They do make monitors that will cover those gamuts, is what you're referring to. But Cloud Strife, I don't know why you would do that. I don't know what the benefit would be, because when you're done, all the work that you're going to do, if you're going to share that image on a computer screen with somebody else, whether it's direct or whether it's on the internet, then it needs to be sRGB, sorry, because that's what the browsers are going to resolve, period. Okay. So, Cloud Strife, I don't know what the ROMM is at all. Like, I honestly have no idea what that is. Am I missing an acronym here? Please type it out, because I don't know what you're talking about. So I want to make sure that I'm not giving you bad information. So, LYQSO, I apologize. Don't know what that's. I don't want to mess it up horribly, but legacy. I will do a video on portfolios, I promise. And the thing with the video on portfolios, obviously, it's another one of those. There's no one size fits all. It really depends on the kind of work you're doing. But there are a lot of very kind of honestly simple when you understand them. A lot of very simple guidelines that apply to every single portfolio for every genre of photography, right? But then obviously, as we branch out into different genres, there are also little idiosyncrasies that are going to be different for each one. But there are a solid set of basics that photographers really miss in portfolios that apply to every single portfolio. And that's all because of basically what is the portfolio for? It is to show off your work and show off the quality of your work, right? But believe me, photographers very, very much miss the storytelling concept behind the portfolio. And again, I don't mean it's like a photojournalism thing, but there's maybe the better word would be to be the impression. And I don't mean, the impression is they're a really good photographer. No. It's really about letting your potential clientele know not only about your quality standards, but the way you approach your work and all those things, all without words, just through your images. Okay. But I will do a last frame on that. You have my word. So let's see here. I did free photography for a whole year to develop an extensive portfolio. The images that I captured during that year have brought me so much business now. Not everyone is willing to do this, though. I'm going to say this word too. Wow, what is it? Everybody with the tough names for me tonight. Psoit photography. I'm sorry if I butchered that sincerely. I will say to you, if you're serious about photography and building a business, that's exactly what you should have done. Some people, and I haven't seen your work, so this is not like a hit or anything. Some people would argue you should have done it for more than a year, right? But that's kind of an old school standard. Meaning back in the day, yeah, nobody was going to build a portfolio in a year. But certainly with today's technology and the immediacy of digital technology and the fact that cameras and lighting and everything has advanced to give us a kind of a quicker jump into it, heck yeah, a year of serious effort and really focused effort is certainly ample time to do it. But indeed, it's quite a bit of effort. Okay. So what is this? Let's see. Cloud Strife. It's Pro Photo. I think it's used interchangeably. I have never heard of ROMM, but I will take your word for it. Okay. Oh, Affinity names it that way. Well, yeah, I'm not an Affinity user, and Adobe certainly doesn't. And good, better, otherwise, Adobe's kind of the standard. Just saying, right? So yeah, I honestly don't know what the benefit would be of having monitors to be able to view images that way. You want a monitor that's going to support that gamut, but you don't want to set your monitor to that color space unless you've got a very specific output need, which sometimes you will have specific output needs, not in those color spaces, but like, for instance, if you're going to send something out to be printed, commercially printed, frequently they will want the images in a CMYK color space. So you're going to change the color profile in the file, but you're not changing your monitor gamuts, to do that. But understand that every web browser that exists, most image browsers, things like Apple iPhotos, that kind of stuff, right? Microsoft Photos, all those programs, they support sRGB, period, right? So once you start to go beyond that to different color profiles, then you run the risk that your files are not going to look the same. So, okay. Let's see. Angelo, you found the meaning of ROM. I confirm it's Pro Photo RGB. I take your word for it, guys. I totally take your word for it. But yeah, I see no benefit in having a monitor that you have set to that unless you've got a very specialized need, period. Generally, what you're going to do, the general workflow is in your camera, depending on your tolerance levels and depending on the quality levels you want, you'll go ahead and you'll shoot at Adobe RGB, which is, by the way, that's what I shoot at. I shoot it on Adobe RGB as the color space in all of my cameras, my Olympus cameras, my Sony camera, okay? I don't go all the way to Pro Photo RGB, in large part because I don't do nearly enough printing. And even when I do print, I'm not printing stuff that has to be an exact match. Look at how much Photoshop work I'm doing, right? My work is very subjective. It's interpretive. So I don't need to match colors that extremely close. I just don't. And 99% of my work is going online. So it's going to wind up sRGB in the end. So by starting at Adobe RGB, all that's doing is giving me a slightly wider color gamut. So I've got a little bit more file to work with and to be able to do my manipulations. But there would be no benefit to me having my monitor set that way at all. There would be no benefit. Angelo, labs will frequently accept both Adobe RGB, sRGB, and Pro Photo RGB, depending on the labs. A lot of the high-end labs will accept that. And that, of course, depends on their printers, how they calibrate their printers, et cetera. But it's not a matter of it exists and people accept it. It's a matter of what's the benefit? Do you really get any benefit from it? And the original question was about having a monitor that defaults to that. I can't even think of a particular case scenario where that would be a benefit. I'm sure there is. But for the kind of stuff that we're all doing, no, there's zero benefit. You're getting way too deep in the weeds with that stuff to worry about it for 99% of what you guys are shooting. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean you're not shooting stuff where it's going to matter. You're not going to see it. One of the things you got to remember, guys, it's a lot like megapixels. We have got technology that's available to us today that's actually kind of stupid. Stupid in the sense that we stress about it, but our brains can't process it. So we don't see the benefit, right? It's like, you walk into a Costco. I was in Costco the other day with my wife. and you walk in the door and there's all the television screens, right? So there's a lot of 8K screens now, right? Well, the problem with those 8K screens, I think the images on those 8K screens suck. And you know why they suck? I mean, I appreciate them for the high resolution and sharpness because I'm a photographer, so I nerd out about that. But the images just look weird. They're too sharp. They're too detailed for what our brains actually want to be able to appreciate. Because what's happening is it's overloading our brains with additional information. The fact that movies have been made at 24 frames a second for decades and decades and decades and decades wasn't just because that's all the technology allowed. That was not the case at all. It was because of the science, the cognitive science that proved that was the frame rate and the shutter sampling that made the most sense to our brains and gave the most realistic image. So when we talk about like crazy high resolution, it's kind of cool for sports. Like, by the way, any of you, if you're baseball fans, I'm a big baseball fan. If you haven't watched baseball on Apple TV yet, oh my God, you're missing out. Just for the experience, the visual experience. I could not quote it back if my life depended on it. Go Google, what is Apple TV doing with baseball? They're using some really cool new camera technology and broadcast technology. So I'm not even talking about like how they did the stats, because also they do stats cooler than anybody on Apple TV. But look at the imagery. I don't care what kind of TV you're looking on. As soon as you see the image, it's different than anything you've ever seen before. But in a kind of a cool way. It like really works. It adds a lot more depth to the image and it's not like fake or gimmicky at all. But like, yeah, 8K resolution for televisions is actually kind of ridiculous. Not even to mention that there's not a lot of 8K content being produced, but it's so sharp, it's actually startling to our brains. And it makes it hard to really, really appreciate it for like a movie, right? As I mentioned, for like sports and that's kind of where, you know, it's got its use. So, Rich, do I use a gray card or a manual white balance or not when shooting portraits? I don't use a gray card, but I do manually white balance to the color temperature of my light. So if I'm in the studio and I'm shooting strobes or LED lights, I will set my color temperature to the color temperature that those lights output, right? In a studio especially, never use auto white balance in a studio, ever, 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 ever. Because like if you've got like a bright red background behind your subject and then, you know, your subject's somewhere in the middle of that background, all that red is going to like make the camera completely screw up your skin tones, like massively. So in a studio, never auto white balance. Even outside, let's say you're photographing a pretty girl and, you know, she's wearing a nice yellow dress and she's Caucasian and you've got, you know, this big green wall of ivy behind her. Auto white balance is going to turn her skin tone like just all kind of crazy colors, right? So there are times where you do have to be aware that auto white balance is auto and it's going to cause you problems. In the studio for portraits though, Rich, no gray cards. You could. It wouldn't be bad if you did. But again, I said this before, portraiture, it's subjective. You know, like if the Vatican calls you and says, hey, we need you to photograph and reproduce the Mona Lisa for us. The colors better be spot on. The tonal ranges better be spot on, right? It's gotta be exact. But in a portrait, or especially like the creative stuff that I do, everything about the color, it's subjective. It's what I want it to be. It's how I want to be, how I want to reproduce it. So it doesn't have to be that exact. It's not to say that I want like, you know, green skin, but it doesn't have to be exact. So gray card, if you want to do it, that's not bad at all. But I don't really feel it's that necessary. Okay. Rodrigo, and almost every time I see your videos, which are really good and deliver clear info, I feel like I've got to delete all my photos. No, don't delete your photos. Just shoot more. That's the point, right? Shoot more. And, you know, honestly, the reason for not deleting your photos more than anything else, guys, and then we're going to wrap up. I mean, look, when you take a set of pictures tomorrow and you shoot 100 frames, and when you do your first pass in the edits, there's like 40 that you're going to drill down on more. You're not going to use all 40, but there's 40. I would delete the 60. That's what I do. You don't have to. But the images that you work from, that 40, and maybe you're only going to pick 1 or 2 out of the 40. That's cool. I would never delete those 40. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one, you can learn more from those. Let's say you pick 2. You can learn more from those 38 pictures that you don't pick than you can from 20 YouTube videos. I'm dead serious, guys. I'm dead serious, okay? Not to mention that 2 years, 3 years, 5 years down the road, I've had this happen. It's horrible, but I've had this happen. The person that you photographed passes away. I've had parents of models that I photographed, spouses of models who passed and reached out to me and said, hey, could we get copies of those pictures? And, you know, were there others that you did that you guys never used? Would it be possible for us to see those? And of course, I made them available to them, right? I usually just give them copies of everything I have. It's like at that point, I'm not going to charge them for it. I give them copies of the full res files. Down the road, bunch of years, every now and then it's fun to kind of go look through your stuff and see what you used to do, where you've come from, how you've progressed, etc. But the learning piece, and I've talked about this before, the learning piece is on those 38 images you didn't use, you don't have to do this every time you shoot, right? But set aside an hour every so often. And when I say every so often, try and do it at least once a month. Go back through a couple recent shoots and not a lot. Don't like do every shoot for the whole month. No, just 1 or 2 shoots. Look at the images that you didn't shoot or didn't select, and then you have to ask yourself the hard questions. Why? Why didn't I pick this picture? And I don't mean like the obvious ones. It's like 5 stops underexposed. Well, duh, right? No, I'm talking about ones, you know, the exposure's good. It's okay, but you just, I don't know, something about the picture, you just didn't like it. That's the one to ask yourself, why? Why didn't I pick this picture? What could I have done in the studio? Do these questions start to sound familiar to those of you that are in my group? What could I have done in the studio to make that picture work? If I was going to go back and do it again, what do I have to do to get the better result? Because you had the original experience of making that picture and the emotional experiences around making that picture, it will still add to your visual database. And you can actually gain experience after. I promise you, I'm not making this up. It's not some crazy mumbo jumbo, right? You're gaining experience after the fact because you're going back and you're walking yourselves through the steps. And you're solving problems. It works. It really works. And I still do it. I still do it to this day. I've done it for years. I still do it. And it's a great way to really hold yourself accountable for your work and really to keep yourself thinking through the process of creating images and improving and getting better. All right, gang. Great conversation tonight. Next week, there will be no last frame. If you are in my TOGKnowledge community, there's also not going to be a community meetup next week because I will be at ClickCon. Notice I didn't pitch ClickCon tonight because it's happening next week. So I will be there. Follow me. If you're not following me already, follow me on Instagram. Check out my stories. I'll be posting all kind of behind the scenes stuff next week. I've got like 8 or 9 shoots that I'm doing while I'm there. So I'm going to be shooting a ton of stuff, plus teaching 3 classes. So I'll be doing lots of Instagram stories. Make sure you check that out. Follow that. When I come back, obviously, I'll share images. I'll share behind the scenes, show you how we made them, all that kind of stuff. But use that time next week, since you won't be listening to me rant. Go pick up your camera and shoot something, because your best shot is your next shot, gang. Adios. Have a great week. Take care.